Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Final Round, brought to you by CG Sports, aka CG Technology and Bitcoin Direct. Joined by my co-host Nick One Kick Blumgren and the man who makes the odds here at the sportsbook, the master of fight betting, Mr. Matthew Holt.
Everybody's got to be a master in something, right?
You know why you're
I'm
so
not
good
gonna
at
lead you on that one.
You know why you're so good at fishing? Because you're the master baiter. My girlfriend's dad told me that one in high school. I always remembered that.
It's a
Thought
good
it was
one.
cute.
I'm going to steal that one from you, actually.
So, another Bellator card in the books, and another pretty much non-competitive event. Like, Bellator's really trying to build guys, and they're trying to get a little momentum going, and Lord knows they're burning a hole in their pockets trying to do so. The main event, King Mo and Rampage, kind of a snoozer.
Yeah, the only interesting part of the fight was the amount of betting activity on the fight, really, most of which was generated by how Rampage looked
fat
at his
Rampage was.
Yeah. I mean, that fight literally was around 190 minus 200 King Mo, and we weren't taking really too much action on it. And all of a sudden, right after the weigh-in, when the weigh-in pictures came out, there was just a flood of King Mo money. And that line went from all the way 190 all the way to minus 380, minus 400 at some places.
Maybe he picked up some new sponsors after that weigh-in.
Yeah, I wanted to bet King Mo, but I wanted to see what Rampage looked out like at weigh-ins. I said if Rampage is fat, I'm taking King Mo. But by the time I got to my CG Sports app, there wasn't any value.
Yeah, it was too
I
much.
did the same thing. I looked at it, but I was waiting for the undercard to show up, and then by the time the fight got there, then I was too late. So I went through the same thing.
Day late, dollar short.
Day late,
But how can you
dollar
lay
short.
that price? I mean, how could you lay 400 with King Mo's chin? And, he just got knocked out by Mirko Cro Cop in his last fight.
That's true, and King Mo did get rocked a little bit in that second round. Do you think Rampage's strategy was, let me get so fat that if King Mo tries to wrestle me, he's going to gas out?
No, I just feel like sometimes, and it happens in every sport. It's not just at UFC or boxing. Sometimes guys just start collecting checks. And he's to that point where wins and losses don't seem that important, and he seems to just want to collect checks.
See, I couldn't believe it. He wanted to do a catch weight of, was it 235?
Yeah, according to him, he thought he was doing a catch weight of 235. And then, 4 days before, they did that media scrum, and it was King Mo who said, I'm not doing a catch weight. Check your
We're
contract.
doing heavyweight.
And, we're at heavyweight, and then suddenly
my God.
he came in at 255.
253.
Yeah.
So, yes. He was 18 pounds over the 235 catch weight. That is a fat Rampage.
Yeah.
So, other than that on the card, the only guy that really impressed Matthew Holt was Team Quest guy, Mr. Cazzola.
Yeah, I will say this. I do think that Bellator is starting to build some young guys. All those young wrestlers that they signed, Ed Ruth and that whole crew. Of course, those guys are all 1-0, 2-0, so it's going to take a little time for that group to really, build up. But Cazzola, look, he looked great. This is a Team Quest guy, came in 7-0 with 6 knockouts. I think 5 or 6 of them were first-round finishes, and 28 seconds later, he's 8-0.
Got another first-round knockout against Jake Roberts. Other than that on the card, we had a Dewey Cooper guy, Nohad Lahat. Am I saying that right?
Noad, yeah.
Nohad Lahat?
I think that's how you say it.
He got a quick RNC victory over Lloyd Carter.
He got dropped in the first round with a shot. I think it was a jab?
As a minus 1,000 favorite. As
minus
a 1 to 10
1,000.
favorite. When he got hit with that punch, a lot of people went,
He had to be the biggest favorite on that card.
huge.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with Bellator. Some of their cards, and I love what Scott's doing over there, but you never see a 1 to 10 favorite in UFC.
Yeah.
You just don't ever see a 1 to 10. And those matchups are never fan-friendly.
Yeah, I like that he came back and got the choke,
Yep.
Yeah, it looked kind of like Kevin Lee in his last fight, where he got hit in the first round, came back and got the choke.
Yeah, well, Dewey conditions those guys so they can take
They're durable.
They can take it, so they can recover from those shots,
Other than that, we had Sergey Karatonov showing up for his Bellator debut against Chase Gormley.
No, it wasn't his debut.
Oh,
so
no?
Sergey Karatonov, they put him in his Bellator debut the fight before, and I forget the young man's name, Joel Ayala or something Ayala, and Karatonov was like a 6-1 favorite. If you check Karatonov's record, you'll see that he just also had another Bellator fight recently, got knocked out in the first round in about 30 seconds. First punch that hit him by Ayala knocked him out. So then they put him in with the same kind of guy in Gormley, and of course Karatonov got the knockout this time. But if you check a few months back, he got KO'd in his Bellator debut in less than a minute.
And he doesn't look like the same Karatonov.
No.
He looked pretty fat and out of shape, but he has heavy hands.
He does.
Emmanuel Sanchez gets a unanimous decision over Marcus Galvao. No real surprise there.
No, Galvao moving up in weight. And unfortunately for Galvao, the kind of guys that give Emmanuel Sanchez trouble are really crisp strikers with good footwork. And Marcus Galvao's always been known as a BJJ guy.
And will always be.
Sanchez had him in the fence most of the time.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, another Bellator card that kind of, the main event disappointed. I'm sure if the main event was a little more exciting, it would have been worth the time watching. But just, seeing Fat Rampage kind of gas out. Well, a big surprise there. Like, he's 253 pounds. I'm not surprised he really didn't have much steam left in the third round at that weight.
Yeah, he just doesn't seem like he cares anymore. It's a payday for him.
The one saving grace for us in that fight was we put a total up on the fight, over under 1.5 rounds with the over minus 200. And a lot of people started betting the under, figuring, well, Rampage in that shape won't be able to go very long. And then, of course, if he wins, it'll probably be by knockout early when he has his pop still. And the fight going the distance actually was beneficial to us from the odds perspective.
Oh, that was the saving grace fight.
Yeah.
Anyways, Bellator's
do a lot of people bet on the over-unders?
Yeah, so look, the fastest growing betting sport in the United States is MMA, and it's been something that we've got asked for more and more. Hey, will you put totals up? Will you put totals up? Especially in fights where the line starts to balloon. People don't want to lay those big numbers. So once King Mo got over 3.5 to 1, people don't want to lay 400 to make 100. Hey, but if I think King Mo can beat this guy quick because he can't make the distance, it gives you an alternative way.
Oh, okay. So you can still bet on the fight, but in a different way.
Yeah, and for all the big pay-per-views, we put up props. Every fighter will win in round 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 3-rounder if it's a 3-rounder.
This sheet.
Yeah, win by knockout, win by submission, win by decision, and it gives those people that want to put 20 to win 100 or 20 to win 80. It's more friendly to those kind of bettors as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to start going that way for my parlays.
Well, there's some spots for guys like you where you would think certain fighters you can kind of say if they win, it's correlated to them winning this way.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, a lot heavyweight fights. If you're gonna take a first round knockout, your greatest odds are in the heavyweight division.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Interesting statistic. Some stat guy shared with me one time. He wrote a book on fighting stats. Very interesting book. But that was the one thing that stood out on me. If you're ever going to bet first round knockout, make sure it's a heavyweight fight. And we saw that with Karatonov versus Chase Gormley and Karatona's last fight as well. So didn't make it out of the first round. In other MMA news, not too much going on. Floyd Mayweather, Conor McGregor, will it happen, won't it? Who knows? Michael Bisping, GSP, still don't have a date set. Rafael Dos Anjos moving up to 170 to fight Tarek Safadine.
I love it. I personally love it. I think it's a great idea, and we've seen the recent success of Cowboy Cerrone, of Jorge Masvidal, making that same 155 to 170 jump, having a ton of success. RDA was having a ton of problems making the weight at 155. It showed in his recent performances. Although, look, it's tough to fight Tony Ferguson, period. but he looked drained in that fight. Right out of the get-go, he came in with no energy. Someone who was there at that fight saw him before the fight and said he doesn't have it. Just seeing,
He looks flat.
Yeah, he just looked flat. Yeah.
Yeah, some of that weight cutting starts taking a toll on some of those guys, So they start thinking of different areas that they can revamp their careers, Like, oh, maybe I'll go up. Maybe I'm not.
Look at the
feeling
guys
so
that
good
have
yet.
had the success.
Yeah.
Rumble Johnson, Cerrone, Masvidal. It's worked for a lot of guys.
Yeah, I'm just wondering when they're going to come out with the weight divisions within 10 pounds of each other.
Sure.
There's been a lot of talk
I've been
about it.
saying that for years. Yeah. It should be, 155, 65, 75, 85,
Well,
95,
they have it in the
205.
smaller divisions, 25, 35, 45, 55. It's after 55 those jumps get bigger.
Yeah.
And remember the UFC used to be over and under 200 pounds?
Yes.
And you know why they made the 205? Because Tito's bitching and whining. Honest to God. Yeah. Because it was the 200-pound, the over 200 guys in the under, and then Tito was having trouble making that. And like,
Well, remember the Tito versus Frank fight, the size difference between Tito and Frank Shamrock?
Shamrock, yeah.
I mean, that was the first mega fight for Tito, was Tito
yeah,
and
it
Frank.
was.
And Tito was huge compared to Frank.
big size difference.
Yeah,
Kevin Lee got a big fight.
Yeah, Kevin Lee, he's got to win this one. If he wins
Michael
this one,
Chiesa, another wrestler.
Yeah, so, Kevin, his striking is coming along with Dewey Cooper. He's looking good in the gym with his sparring, He's working with all the stand-up guys now, so he's doing good.
Yeah, stand-up actually looked good in that last fight. Right before he got the finish.
And he knew how to adjust.
He
Yeah, he did adjust.
Yeah.
He
He
knew how
did
to
certainly adjust. Because
So
I never saw him get caught with any punches in the second round.
Yeah, no,
Not
he-
like in the first.
He listened to his corner and he came out, stepping the right way and then
And
blitzed on him.
against Chiesa, another outstanding wrestler, but Chiesa's hands aren't too good.
No?
Hasn't impressed me with his hands. I think if Kevin Lee really makes it a point to keep this fight standing and put these on him,
Or
he's got a good shot.
or that nice right kick to the head again.
Yeah, that's what got him.
Make him defend that takedown and
That's
then
what
kick
set
him
up
in the
the
head.
win in his
With
last
Ronaldo,
fight.
yeah. And give it to the UFC. If you make enough noise, and usually you'll get a fight. And Kevin's been
Squeaky
calling
wheel
out a
gets
top
the
10
grease.
guy for a while,
yeah.
and now he's getting one.
Yeah, he doesn't get the guys he calls out, but they calls out people and then they give him a guy that they want to a guy that he should lose to, and he's been beating him. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, you want to try and match make our cards? Well, here, you
Yeah.
get this guy instead.
Yeah.
So they give him a tough guy.
But
you
not
know?
the guy.
Like he wanted to fight that.
Magomedov?
The Russian.
The pretty boy. What's his name? He's been losing
not
lately.
Magomedov.
The real pretty kid, the karate kid.
The guy with the blonde hair. He got
Yeah.
choked out by the guy that Sam.
Sage Northcutt?
Sage Northcutt.
He was like calling out Sage Northcutt. I think he's a fake.
Kevin can't fight Sage. I mean, Sage is
This is like when they first brought him
Oh.
in, and he was like, they're giving this pretty boy all the
They were giving him a lot of attention.
and they were
Yeah.
just overlooking
Yeah.
Kevin. So they were like, so Kevin was like, let me fight that guy. I'll show you what he's got.
Sage was really exposed in his
Yeah.
last fight.
His last couple. I mean, Brian Barberena choked him out.
Yeah. So
And-
anyway, then he calls out
He's
the
so
next
quick
guy.
to tap too. He
Yes.
doesn't even fight down there.
No.
No. We got. Didn't he get choked out with like some
Brian
open
Barberena.
leg guillotine or something? The guy's legs weren't even closed.
I just remember in that last fight against the
Mickey
kid,
Gall.
Mickey Gall.
Yeah.
That choke where Gall was just starting to cinch it up, and he was.
He was tapping.
He was
didn't
And
want
the
to
one
get hurt.
before, he was putting it on Brian Barberena, who couldn't hang with him striking wise, but you saw him start to gas at the end of round one. And as soon as Barberena put him down and started putting him in a choke, same point, he just I've
started
had
tapping
enough.
like crazy.
And everyone called him out for it, like, hey, the choke wasn't even in. Why did you tap? And he said that his nose, he had some kind of sinus infection, and that was his excuse that he couldn't breathe anyway, so why get choked, you know?
Well,
Got a glass neck.
Yeah.
came in with all the promotion, and now it's been quiet.
But in silence, he
Been
gets
silent
stopped,
out there.
choked out a couple of times like that. Yeah, you lose your steam. His next fight will probably be fighting for his job if he wasn't so pretty.
Yeah. And then, Kevin's like, every time he calls out the guy that he wants, he wanted the Russian guy, Khabib,
Magmadov.
Magmadov.
Yeah.
He wanted him, and they give him the 12-0 guy.
Yeah.
So, he's been proving himself lately.
But I like the way he opens his mouth.
Yeah.
And
Like if he wins this
Closed
fight,
mouth
he's
don't
going
get
to
fat.
get a big fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
oh yeah,
Because you beat the number 6 guy, now you're talking Ferguson,
yeah, one of the
Nurmagomedov.
top.
Yeah, I mean, one of
top
those guys,
dudes.
Eddie
Right
Alvarez.
away
Yeah.
from a title shot. So, Kevin Lee versus Michael Chiesa. Tarek Safardine versus Rafael Dos Anjos at 170. These are just some of the fights coming up that we're kind of looking forward to seeing. But other than that, this weekend, Saturday, April 8th, Bellator going head-to-head against the UFC. But, the Bellator card is kind of weak. The main event, Melvin Manhoef versus Rafael Carvalho 2. Remember, this is a rematch. The first time Carvalho won a split decision that a lot of people didn't agree with.
Yeah, I remember, what's his name over there?
Jimmy Smith.
Jimmy Smith. Yeah.
was
and
going nuts.
Yeah, and it was the most emotional I'd ever seen an announcer. Like, he couldn't get in the ring to do the post-fight interview because he was so emotionally distraught over how bad the decision
And he was
was.
verbalizing with,
Yes.
I've never been so disgusted with
He
this
was,
sport in my
yes.
life. He was saying things like that. And it wasn't too bad of a decision. It was just a bad fight.
It was a horrible
Both
fight.
guys
There
were
was just
stalling.
no action. Yeah.
It's like those are the kind of fights you want to see the yellow cards brought back
Yeah.
for. No,
Yeah.
no action whatsoever.
A little bit of pride
And-
rules there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the old pride rules, and then a couple missed eye pokes.
What's
Carvalho
it, the
poked
yellow
Manhoef in
card
the
is
eye.
a warning, and the red card's 10% of your purse.
No, I think the yellow card's 10%.
Oh, the yellow
Oh, wow.
Right
card.
away,
right out of the
boom!
gate.
They pull
Wow.
that out,
That
10%.
would make you fight.
yeah,
Those are the
it
whole,
sure would.
yeah. I want to see those brought back.
That was a bad
This is
fight.
a rematch of a snoozer fight. The announcer Jimmy Smith, commentator, was disgusted by the decision, but I don't think it was that bad of a decision. I think it was a worse fight than a
Yes,
decision.
I agree.
Yeah.
So hopefully these guys got enough heat for the fight being boring and kind of feel like they owe it to the fans to make this one more exciting.
Both of them actually had. What's so strange about how bad that fight was, and it was bad, was they both have a history of putting on good fights.
Yeah.
So that one looked like
Manoff's
fireworks. I remember
exciting.
watching that fight going, oh, this could be good. And then it was just so bad, and you were like, what happened? These two guys, I mean, I love Melvin Manhoef, but he's gone out on his shield plenty of
Oh,
times.
yeah. He goes down swinging.
That's right. And look, he either KOs you or gets KO'd, and that's just his. And to see it go down like that was so strange.
I think part of the reason for Manoff's inactivity was that was his first 5-round fight, and he's more of a front runner. I think he
Yes.
was more scared of how his gas tank would held up.
True.
Because he
and-
usually comes out guns a-blazing in 3-rounders.
And I think obviously Carvalho expected the guns to come out blazing, and he was probably looking to counter. But with, it's just one of those things. You're only going to counter. You only train to counter this guy that comes out.
And then he
he's
doesn't
not
come
coming
forward.
out, and now you're both just kind of standing there going, oh, what do we do now?
Yeah, those are those counter fighters. You got to get the other guy to go so you can counter.
Yeah.
And then now you both are waiting to go, and now you're just looking at each other. Who's going to go? Am I going to go? Who's going to go first here?
So they're going head-to-head against the UFC, but the UFC, the one thing it has going for it, well, one thing Bellator has going is it's free. The UFC is a pay-per-view, but the UFC card is pretty stacked. I'm looking forward to a lot of fights on this card. Let's start off talking Will Brooks, minus 265 over Charles Oliveira.
Yeah, and this one's come down a little bit. When I left the office to come over here, it was already down to 250. My guess is when we get to fight time, this thing could be as low as 220 for a couple reasons. A, Charles Oliveira actually has the more name recognition in here. He's been in the UFC so long. He's fought so many big names in the UFC that I think, if you're just a novice bettor walking up to the window with the intention of betting the main event, Rumble Cormier, and you want to bet some other fights, you recognize Charles Oliveira, whereas Will Brooks really made his claim to fame in Bellator.
A lot of people who
Yeah.
watch UFC don't know him.
That fight.
And Will Brooks, you talk about guys that give up. I mean, both of his losses are by knockout, and both of them, I mean, I know he had a hurt rib against Cowboy, but even his other knockout, he's kind of a front runner too. He's great on top position, super athlete, amazing wrestling, great footwork, But once things aren't going great for him, he doesn't have the best history of fighting out adversity either.
Yeah, his last fight, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see this fight. This guy's a wrestler. This guy's going to put him on his back. And it just seemed like that the other guy was so strong. Cowboy was too strong for him.
Yeah, Cowboy Oliveira really missed weight by a lot. Will
He did,
Brooks
yeah.
popped his rib in that fight after the first
That's
round.
right.
And you could see him complain to his corner. But I like what Matt said about Will Brooks, that when he looks good, he wins. He doesn't really overcome adversity well. I'm just not sure that Charles Oliveira, 145-pounder, coming up in weight, is the type of guy that could give Will Brooks a hard time.
You're right, and the problem is Oliveira's. I think his best part of his game is his jiu-jitsu and his ground game, and there's nobody better at top position than Will Brooks.
Yeah.
So, as we saw with Emmanuel Sanchez last night in Bellator, sometimes being the Brazilian jiu-jitsu on the bottom of a really good guy in top position isn't
It's
a
a
great
nightmare.
formula. Yeah.
And Will Brooks, like you said, doesn't overcome adversity well. He gets hit hard and he becomes less of a fighter. But we've also seen that with Charles Oliveira. Let's not forget when Cub Swanson hit him with that right hand, he said, I don't want any more of this. He kind of stepped back and gave up after that. So I think if Brooks could put it on Oliveira, that Oliveira is the similar type of fighter. He doesn't really overcome adversity. He doesn't fight good after really getting hurt with strikes. With grappling's a different story,
Yes.
but with strikes, I think he folds.
He might. The one interesting thing about this is, and it's something that you kind of talked to me about and I've paid attention to a little more, was Charles Oliveira is really young. He's only 27 years old, and he started in the UFC, I think, at 21. But you could kind of see the wear and tear of fight miles now. So 27, you think, wow, that's super young, 27. But this is a guy who has almost 30 career fights, and he's fought a lot of tough dudes. And suddenly a guy who is ultra durable in Charles Oliveira has been finished in his last 3 losses. And, I don't know, maybe the miles have caught up with him.
And yes, all by chokeouts. He lost to Max Holloway. It's called an esophagus injury.
Yeah.
And his last 2 fights have been to Anthony Pettis and Ricardo Lamas, been by the same move, the guillotine.
And he was beating. I thought he was winning the fight with Anthony Pettis personally.
He was looking great in that fight.
And that was a fight I thought was tailor-made for him. I actually made a small wager on Charles Oliveira myself there
because
as an
Pettis
underdog.
wasn't going to out-wrestle.
And that weight cut for Pettis was, wow, his first time making 45. It didn't seem like the weight cut was smooth for Pettis. And you saw it in the fight. He started to gas. But as soon as he slapped on that guillotine, Oliveira didn't seem to fight it off well.
Maybe another example of a guy with a glass neck.
Well, maybe, is there any odds on the guillotine on this fight?
Now, the first fight on the main card, well, I'm guessing it'll be the first fight. I think, like you said before, Matt, 2 guys that are fighting for their jobs. Jan Blachowicz versus Patrick Cummings.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, I do think they're fighting for a job, especially Patrick Cummings at 36 years old now, 8-4. Both of these guys have lost 3 out of 4. But I feel like Patrick Cummings, who kind of got a name by being the guy who was selling, coffee at a coffee shop, and then the next week stepped in there with Daniel Cormier on short notice. Everyone forgave that loss. But since then, the losing 3 out of 4 now, St. Peru, Teixeira, and to Little Nog. And in the Little Nog loss, that one really stood out to me. I was like, Glover's a lot better than this guy. So I get it. And St. Peru was storming at the time, but Little Nog was on the downslide. And he crushed him. So I just don't know what Cummings has left.
It wasn't even close. But Jan Blachowicz, he really hasn't impressed me with his striking. I mean, he's lost to Jimmy Manoa, Corey Anderson, and no shame in Alexander Gustafsson, but Gustafsson really just out-wrestled him in this fight. Do you think Cummings could just take a page out of Gustafsson's book and said, hey, if Gustafsson could just take this guy down at will, I should have an easy time doing it myself?
I am going to bet Patrick Cummings in this fight just for that reason. I was trying to avoid it because I don't want everyone else to move the line too much. But, and not just Gustafsson, but Corey Anderson. Go back and watch the Corey Anderson fight against Blachowicz.
That's a good point.
And it's all top position of Anderson. And never once could Blachowicz get up. I mean, Anderson has good top game, but he couldn't even get up once.
Yeah, and a lot of other guys have been able to get up off Corey Anderson, who's a good wrestler, but not too heavy on top. And this is an interesting fight because I see Jan Blachowicz, big advantage in striking over Patrick Cummings.
Sure.
Patrick Cummings, huge advantage in wrestling over Jan Blachowicz. So it's, whose hole in their game is going to be bigger? Is Cummings going to get caught early, or is Jan Blachowicz going to get taken down early? That's really what this fight's going to come down to.
Agree. If Cummings doesn't get caught, he out-wrestles him easy. But Cummings has been knocked out his last 3 losses.
Yeah, and pretty easily.
Yeah, so he needs to avoid eating
his
any
chin
shot.
isn't too durable. For a wrestler who hasn't been hitting the head an awful lot, his chin is not too durable. Fight I'm really looking forward to, Chris Weidman looking to get back on the winning track against Gegard Mousasi, who's been red hot as of late. Weidman has been destroyed in his last 2 fights. How is he going to psychologically perform in this guy, Mousasi, who's been on a tear lately?
Interestingly enough, and I didn't realize this till someone told me, and I looked, and of course it was true, that Chris Weidman's last 4 wins in a row were all over Brazilian fighters. Vitor Belfort, Anderson Silva twice, and Lyoto Machida. So he had beaten 4 Brazilians in a row. First time the last 2 guys he fought weren't Brazilian, both knocked him out. So someone said, look, he can only beat Brazilians, and now he's fighting a European guy, so he's probably in trouble. But
Yeah, and this guy's got great stand-up.
Yeah, Mousasi has great stand-up, but can Mousasi stop Weidman's takedowns?
I think he'll get taken down, but I think he'll get back up.
See, Mousasi has been out-wrestled before. We saw him out-wrestled by Jacare.
Yep.
And, who else? Lyoto Machida just beat him by a decision, wasn't out-wrestling. But I feel like if Weidman's on and could take Mousasi down, Mousasi's going to be fighting the clock. It'll be Mousasi trying to get back to his feet and look for a knockout before the 3-round time limit goes up.
Interestingly enough, when Mousasi was in Strikeforce, he was a striker, and everyone said, wow, this game's amazing. And when he came over to UFC, he seemed a little tentative with his striking, and he tried to use his wrestling, got in trouble a couple times. He was out wrestling Uriah Hall the first time, and then Hall opened the second round at that big spin kick and knocked him out. But since then, he's gone back to his striking, and suddenly he's knocked out 3 straight opponents, Mousasi, and he's looked really good lately. And not bums, right? I mean, he knocked out Thiago Santos. He knocked out Uriah Hall. Of course, he knocked out Vitor Belfort, who everyone knocks out now. But but I think Mousasi's all-around game is really good. This is a great fight. For sentimental reasons, I like Weidman as a dog here, but to your point, how does he rebound from being knocked out twice in a row? And the Yoel Romero knee that was crushing.
Yeah, it was. And that was a close fight, too. I felt like it was dead even that 3rd round when he got blasted with that knee, and his nose just exploded.
Yeah, and when you get hit like that sticks with you for a few fights. You start getting a little bit more tentative on your takedowns. You're thinking, oh, here comes that knee again.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So once you get hit with those big shots, you see the wrestlers start second-guessing themselves.
Yeah, losing a little confidence. So by that comment, Nick, you like Mousasi in this fight?
I like Mousasi, but I really would like to see Weidman, put him on his back or put him against the fence and just work him, not give him any space.
See, slight favorite, Mousasi, a -125 favorite now, fighting the former champion. And I kind of like Weidman in this fight. I think if anyone could psychologically rebound from getting destroyed like that, it's tough, gritty wrestlers like Chris Weidman.
And that's a good team he trains with. They got a bunch of
really
good guys
is,
up
and
there,
his hands are no joke either.
People underestimate his offensive striking ability. Yep.
Remember that
that's a good team up there. Those guys.
That beautiful elbow knockout he had against the Filipino
Mark Munoz.
Mark
yes.
Munoz.
Standing elbow at the time. You're like, wow, what was that?
And another beautiful knockout against Anderson Silva with that leaping left hook.
The left hook.
He's got a great left hook. He actually fought Uriah Hall before the UFC, and he put Uriah Hall down with that long left hook as well. So don't sleep on Chris Weidman's left hand.
Yeah. And I thought he was hanging in there with Rockhold in their fight. Striking-wise on the feet.
He really was.
I thought it was dead even on the feet till he got caught with the big shot and changed the whole fight.
Was that I remember when Rockhold got top position, was that because Weidman had whiffed with the spinning back kick and he got
Yes,
his back?
that's right. And everyone said, why would you even go for that in a fight where a lot of people, if not dead even, some people even thought maybe he was winning the fight.
Very close fight.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of the end. Once Rockhold got on top of him after he whiffed with that spinning back kick, oof, it got ugly.
Yeah.
Really ugly. So, close fight. Nick, his money's going with Mousasi. His heart's with Weidman. My money's with Weidman. And
I'm with Weidman. My heart and my money. I mean,
heart and money
yeah.
from Matt's with Chris Weidman.
Yeah.
Other than that, we have Thiago Alves coming back up to welterweight after a brief stint at lightweight where he lost a decision to Jim Miller. He's fighting the durable veteran, 37-year-old Patrick Cote, who's done pretty good at 170. 6-2 in his last 8 fights. I kind of like Cote in this fight. I think it's guys when that first fight going back up after they made that weight. They usually don't fare too well. It was only one fight at lightweight, though. Are you surprised to see him going up after just one fight?
I personally think Thiago Alves' days as a competitive guy against ranked opponents is over. This is a guy who's 4-6 in his last 10 fights. And this is another situation where I think to the novice fan, Thiago Alves is the name because he fought for the title against GSP. But Cote's actually been a lot more consistent the last few years here. And look, Alves has lost 2 straight. He's lost 4-7. He's lost 6 of his last 10. He just cannot get it done against big-time opponents. And before the Cerrone knockout loss, Cote had won like 4 or 5 in a row.
Would you say, despite being 4 years younger than Patrick Cote, Alves has more miles on him?
Yeah, and I think we can't just look at miles in terms of fights because, Mousasi is a perfect example. He has over 50 pro fights, but sometimes it's the wear and tear.
It's damage.
That's right. And the weight cutting of Thiago Alves. I mean, like you said, he's had to drop huge amounts of weight to make 70 in the past,
Yeah,
and that can be...
He worked with Mike Dolce to make 170. It was really hard. I heard of him on fight day being as heavy as 200 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah.
30 pounds, that's taking a lot out of you. How's his gas tank going to hold up against Patrick Cote? And Cote always fights strong in the third round. He never has problems gassing out. Cote a minus 160 favorite, and a guy I kind of like in this one.
I think that price is going to go up. I think at $1.60 right now, that's the right price to bet Cote, and I won't be surprised if he's a 2-1 favorite come fight night.
Last but not least, the main event of the evening, Rumble Johnson against Daniel Cormier for a second time. And right now, Rumble Johnson, a very slight favorite at minus 125, despite being choked out by Cormier in the first fight.
And we've had this fight up for betting for almost 2 months now, and we have written 2.5 times as many tickets on Rumble Johnson as we have Daniel Cormier. But our 3 biggest bets so far are all on Daniel Cormier. And I like Cormier a lot here. I think Rumble Johnson has a history of gassing out, and if he can't knock you out early, then he can be easily out-wrestled. And Daniel Cormier showed that in the first fight. And although Daniel Cormier is 38 years old, I don't know what has changed in this fight because I saw Rumble hit Cormier clean in the first fight, and Rumble bounced back, put him on the ground, wear him out, and choke him out. So, I love watching Rumble fight as much as everyone else, and I think the spectacular knockouts tend to draw people to him. But in reality, what's different this time around?
Yeah, exactly. Cormier withstood the storm in the first fight. He did get caught with that one overhand right, but he recovered lickety-split very quickly. And if you look at Rumble Johnson's record, besides the eye poke from Kevin Burns, his last 4 losses have all been by rear naked choke, but because it seems like if you get on Rumble's back, it's over. And the theme of this show has been the glass neck. Does Rumble Johnson have a glass neck?
Yeah. Well, those guys over at AKA, they condition hard. So, they're in good condition. So if they do get hit with good shots, they can recover. A lot of guys are not conditioned, so when they get hit with a big shot, they don't want to fight through it. But those guys over there, they train hard,
And a testament to Cormier, he's durable as could be. At heavyweight, I've never really seen him hurt or rocked. In this fight against the guy with arguably the heaviest hands in the division, landed clean on him, and Cormier didn't really seem hurt by it.
I mean, I've seen Cormier fight in the Strikeforce heavyweight tournament and throw around big heavyweights.
Ragdoll Josh Barnett.
Yeah, never be hurt. Fight John Jones, arguably the greatest light heavyweight of all time. He was never hurt in
Never
that fight
rocked.
once. And Rumble
Alexander
Johnson,
Gustafsson,
yeah, that's
I
right.
think, has hurt him worse than anyone. I think he was more rocked in that fight against Gustafsson than
would
he was
agree.
against Rumble Johnson.
I would agree.
And I believe that was a knee that hurt him.
Yep. I don't know what's going to be different this time.
And he recovered from it.
That's right.
Yeah, that's that conditioning, you know. He takes those shots with good conditioning, you can recover.
Yeah.
And he didn't take Gustafsson down because he said before the fight, nobody thinks I can strike. I'm going to stand up with Alexander Gustafsson. And he did and won the fight. I mean, Cormier is one tough dude.
Yeah, he's a tough wrestler, you
Yeah.
know.
He is. As a slight underdog, I kind of like him. I see this fight going the same way. I think Cormier is going to be able to weather the storm. He's going to fight really smart that first round. And then third, fourth, and fifth rounds, be a little more aggressive and look to take Rumble Johnson down. And once he gets on top, you've seen him do it with pretty much everyone. He's a nightmare. Just ask Dan Henderson once that guy gets on top of you.
It seemed like in that last fight, too, Rumble was a little bit timid of him.
Well, he can get takedowns at will. And you know, as a striker, if you're not good off your back or fighting with a guy on your back and he can get takedowns at will, then that slows your strikes down.
Yeah.
It seemed like you think you really can take Rumble Johnson now because Rumble's hips are really, really strong. He's a hard guy to take down when he's defending the takedown. But it just seems like when Rumble gets a little bit tired and you're able to time the shot on him like Cormier did in the first fight, that's when you get Rumble down. I'd be surprised to really see Cormier trying hard for takedowns early in the fight.
Didn't he take him down every round in the last fight?
I think so.
I don't remember, but I thought he took him down every round until he finally choked him out.
Till he finished him in the
Yeah.
third. Yeah, I got to take another look at that fight. I just remember that overhand right, Cormier briefly dropping, shaking that off, and then I remember Cormier getting that top position.
I remember him off balance and he like rolled all the way across the octagon, but he got right up and he seemed clear. But it did look huge. You get hit and you go rolling across the octagon.
So I like Cormier, slight favorite. Hard to bet against Rumble Johnson's heavy hands. So our picks for UFC 210 this Saturday are, for me, Thiago Alves versus Patrick Cote. I'm going Cote. Will Brooks versus Charles Oliveira. Going Will Brooks all the way. I'm taking Cormier over Rumble Johnson, and I'm taking Weidman over Mousasi. As far as who I'm putting my money on, it's just going to be Cote and Daniel Cormier.
One more pick I like, too, that we haven't talked about, and I just want to say this, one of my favorite sneaky picks on the card is Sean Strickland, 26 years old. He's 18-1, 5-1 in the UFC. This guy's really, really good. He's going against Kamaru Usman, who won that season of The Ultimate Fighter, and Usman gets a lot of credit for winning The Ultimate Fighter, and he's going to be a favorite in this fight. But he's one of those wrestler guys where if he can't get you down, he's going to be in trouble in this fight. I like Strickland as the dog here. 12 of his 18 wins by finish, and I think he has a lot more ways to win the fight.
That's a good record. Do you think that Usman's mainly the favorite because he has had more attention and more notoriety winning the Ultimate Fighter?
Of course. You know, he won the Ultimate Fighter and, you know, since then has gone 4-0 in the UFC, but he's all top game. I mean, his striking game really hasn't developed yet at all.
On this entire card, the Strickland versus Usman, do you see Strickland being the dog having the largest betting value on the entire card?
No, to me it's Daniel Cormier. I feel like Daniel Cormier should be like a 160, 170 favorite here because he has so many ways to win this fight, and Rumble Johnson has one, and that's knockout punch and early knockout punch. So I think Cormier is the biggest value as an underdog, but Strickland might be second.
And it is very rare to see a guy being the favorite in a rematch in which the guy was finished in their first fight. Cormier finished Anthony Johnson in their first fight. Now in this rematch, Rumble Johnson is a slight favorite.
And not a fluke finish. Not a fight where one guy was winning and landed the big shot to save him. A fight where outside of one big shot, he was getting dominated.
Yeah, I thought I had him ahead on the scorecards myself. I think if this fight goes to a decision, it's going to be Cormier.
Yeah, I don't think Rumble Johnson can win a decision.
Like you said,
Yeah.
Rumble's got one way to win.
Yeah.
And
Now,
that's
granted,
power.
he wins a lot that way.
Yeah.
but that's it.
Well, I'm going to take Cormier on this fight. Cormier.
You like Cormier as well.
I like Cormier.
All three of us like Cormier. There's some betting value there. The other betting value is
And I might have to
Strickland.
take that under 3. I think he'll probably get choked out in the 3rd round again.
Again, 3rd round again. I'm just going to straight up Cormier. I think he, he's not going to really leave himself vulnerable to try to get the finish. If it's there,
so
he'll
we're
take
all with
it.
Daniel?
We're all with Daniel Cormier.
Yeah.
All with Daniel Cormier. Who do you got, Brooks or Oliveira?
I like Brooks.
He's a pretty big favorite.
I just can't lay that price.
I won't.
Yeah,
I hate the
there's
idea
no
of
value
laying
in it.
$520 to make $200.
Yeah.
Just because I think Charles Oliveira is so talented, but the fact that he's been finished 3 times in his last 4 fights gives me pause. I'm gonna keep my money in my pocket on that one.
Yeah. I think Will Brooks wins, but I'm not going to bet on that one.
Not touching that either. Thiago Alves, Patrick Cote, minus 160. That's not too bad.
I love it. I think Patrick Cote can win a decision, can knock him out. He's going to be the better striker. And Thiago Alves can't get takedowns anymore
Nope.
either. I'm not sure how he wins this fight.
I mean, Thiago, I don't think he's gone for a takedown since he tried one versus Chris Lytle and got choked out in the final 30 seconds of their fight.
And he could land the big shot against Cote. Cote's been knocked out before, just got knocked out by Cowboy Cerrone. But I think Cote, he's making that last run at 37. This is his last run. And he's looked good at 170. He's a big, strong 170. Yeah.
Yeah, I like Patrick Cote on that one.
And finally, Weidman versus Mousasi. I like Weidman. You like Mousasi. And
I
your
might be
heart's with
throwing my
Weidman.
money away, but I'm betting Chris Weidman. I feel like Nick's right here and that Mousasi's going to be too big, too strong, right in his prime. But I'm betting Chris Weidman, so come on, Weidman.
So there you have it. The biggest betting value of this card definitely lies in Cormier versus Rumble Johnson. Probably second to that is Strickland being the underdog against Usman. And we all like Patrick Cote over Thiago Alves. And that is UFC 210 this Saturday, going head-to-head with Bellator, Manhoef versus Carvalho 2. But I think I'm going to DVR the Bellator, and my eyes are going to be, along with my money, watching the UFC. So go get your CG Sports app out. I know I'm going to do it now before that line goes up, and going to put some money right now on Daniel Cormier for Matthew Holt and Nick Blomgren, Stephan Bonnar. See you next week on the final round.
See you next week.